play. They were going to be in the rotation. I think at least one of them was going to start. So secondary-wise, welcome back to town, Kerry Combs. You got a lot of talent to deal with, but you got a lot of holes to fill.
Well, those obviously that's a big need, right? Or just a big question mark, and usually that question is answered positively by the Buckeyes. I mean, we always have guys in the secondary. I mean, right now Ohio State is known as VBU, and these guys seem to come out of nowhere. And with Kerry back in town, and they're well coached, they're really smart football players. They're aggressive. They're a prideful group back there because they understand what it means to be part of the DBU, and I think there's a tradition building back there, and so those guys take it seriously and they push each other. And why the secondary is usually so good as Ohio State because of the competition created, and I'm not concerned with the secondary right now. Now maybe that could change once the season starts, but I always think they always seem to answer the challenge when the challenge is presented to them. I got one big question mark on this team.
Is it running back?
That running, I don't know who the running back is. I don't know.
Well,
who
you and I were the president and vice president of the Master Teague fan club.
As a backup, not as the guy. He's not the guy. He's not the guy.
Really?
Yes.
Why not?
Because he's not diverse enough for me. What I would run at that position.
You didn't buy my Eddie George comparison the other day, jumping from his sophomore to his junior year.
No, Eddie's better. No, Master Teague is a bruiser. He's one step, one cut, north and south guy. He doesn't have the hands or fluidness or the hips or the shake that I want in that position. He's a perfect 1B. He's a one changeup guy. He's not a starting running back. That's not to say he's not going to play in the NFL. That's not to say he can't have 1,000 yards. We talked about taste, right?
Yeah.
That's just not my taste at running back. It's nothing to do with Master Teague or what type of football player he is. I just don't think he's going to be the starting running back when it comes out and when it's starting. When the first game of the season. I could be wrong. I'm just telling you that's not what I want. Now, I want him to carry the ball 10 to 15 times a game, but I want the J.K. Dobbins type of running back. I want the Ezekiel Elliott type of running back. I want the more of the shake guy, the guy that can make people miss in space. He doesn't make people miss in space. What does he do with people in space? What's he try to do?
Run him over.
That's it.
But he can run away from him too. I think Teague will be the starting running back. I don't have any doubt about that. Steele Chambers, DeMario McCall, those are guys that come to mind. Marcus Crowley, and they got one freshman that was like a late commit from Cincinnati, Winton Woods. Yeah, I do think I will, because you had a great appreciation for J.K. Dobbins. I will gain a greater appreciation.
To start the season.
Start the season? Okay.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But
we both became big fans.
Quickly became a big fan of J.K. Dobbins. What's wrong?
I see Tanner Muse diving at him from behind in the.
You gotta let it go.
I know.
You gotta let it go. You're turning into me where this is really true, that I still will actually wake up in the middle of the night and think of a play of an NFL game that I played in.
Doesn't surprise me.
And Ohio State game. I still wake up in the middle of the night on a blitz in Michigan, my sophomore year, and Harbaugh hits John Colasar on a deep post.
You no way had coverage on that.
No, I was blitzing. I could have got to Harbaugh. I banged him, but he threw the ball. I was late. I was there too late. And there's Colasar running down on the post, wide open, catches the ball and goes into the end zone. I woke up in the middle of the night. I wake up in the middle of the night all the time thinking about games that I'm still playing. Like I'm still in my youth playing this game. Maybe that's why I am committed to doing 6,000 miles this year. Now I have Achilles tendonitis in my right hip herps because the past 2 days I've gotten a total of 73 miles in 2 days.
Have you ever heard the phrase "listen to your body"?
Yeah, but that's weakness. The pain is weakness leaving my body.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That might be a warning sign. You should take a day
My
off.
Achilles just.
How many miles are you ahead? You're like way ahead of pace.
Well, I'm at 1,130 miles right now.
And we said 16 miles a day was what you needed to average.
16.5. I need to average 500 a month.
Okay.
So I have 9 more days that I could take off and still be 112 miles ahead.
Maybe a week's rest would do your body
I can't
good.
Rest. I can't. It's just it's a mental illness right now.
How many days?
I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, I have, like, if I don't do it, then,
I know it's good for the mind.
No, but if I don't do it, then I get anxious and I start pacing, and I feel guilty.
Well, pacing, because walking, and you can count that.
Well, I did 2.5 miles before I came here this morning.
What? On what?
On the treadmill. Then I'll go home and do 20 on the Peloton. Then
I'm looking into my crystal ball, envisioning a summer day where you're biking out here to do the show.
I'm not biking out here. You kidding me? Between the wild animals.
Get you 15 miles. 15 out, 15 back.
Between the wild animals and the crazy drivers. I mean, these farmers are insane drivers out here.
They are.
I'm driving down. What's the road I turn on? Not Smith Calhoun. What's
the other one's Rings?
I turn on Rings and I'm going 55 and that's too slow. Like
what?
Yes. The other day, I mean, there's people like tailgating me. And I'm going the speed limit, then I have to speed up, and the guy speeds up and passes. This is insane out here.
It is insane.
It's a wild, wild west out here.
On a tractor, no less. You know they're in a hurry.
You really like living here, by the way?
I do, very much.
Seriously?
I do.
It's
quiet.
You guys really like this?
Yes.
Right.
I do like it. Just hope we can
what about the barn?
Get some sponsors so I can continue to afford the house payment.
Kids, bad news. Everybody needs to get a job.
Oh yeah. That's enlightening that you still wake up thinking about plays. I'm not the least bit surprised by that.
I don't like it.
Well, I can understand that.
Yeah, well, here's the reason why. One, it's not. Why do you think I don't like it?
Because you want to move on from that life, and probably because you don't remember the great plays you made. You ever wake up thinking, "Wow,
No.
Oregon, I was a beast"?
No, never.
No.
No. It's always
that Iowa game. They were number one. I took care of Chuck Long that day. That Cotton Bowl. No, you never wake up thinking of that.
I had off games. So
You only had 2 interceptions in the Cotton Bowl.
And against Iowa, but against
Only
Chuck
2.
Long, my hamstring was tight. That's how I get.
Take a tough pill.
I just play in the Cotton Bowl bad. I only had 2 picks, 1 touchdown, and I don't know, 15 tackles, but my back and hamstrings were tight. So don't hold that against me.
It's a wonder you even got drafted.
No kid ass Mel Kiper. No, but all seriousness, I don't want to think about it because I'm a little sad when I wake up.
Because it's over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate feeling like that. But there's nothing I can do about controlling that. I mean, I can't control my dreams, but I still dream about playing all the time.
Maybe now would be a good time to think about thankfulness that you got to experience that, and many others dreamt of it and did not.
Okay.
But you also put in a ton of work to make it happen, too.
Okay.
I don't want to undervalue that part of it. Email
I
time.
didn't build that.
No, you did build that.
Okay.
Email time. SpielmanHooleyPodcast@gmail.com. This comes from BGW. He says, again, I love the podcast today. Great insight as always. Question on Cardale Jones. From what I read, it appears the XFL could pay Cardale $500,000 to stay if they're still viable next year. What is an average NFL backup quarterback salary?
Roughly around 500, I would think, for Cardale.
He said, I'm thinking that might not be that much of a raise. He might be better off staying in the XFL, being the face of the league. Then if it goes under, then the NFL will be an option. Also, I forgot to mention in my previous email, I have an OSU Spielman bobblehead. He says booblehead, but I think he means bobblehead. That someone got me for a gift some time ago. It fits nicely on my shelf in my OSU-themed bathroom.
Nice.
Very good.
What about Cardale? A lot of people put me in the bathroom.
What about Cardale staying as face of the XFL? Are there endorsements to be made off that?
I think a little bit, probably more local endorsements, but
He's in Washington, D.C.
I actually want to amend a comment. I do think he'd probably make more in the NFL as a backup. I was thinking for Cardale Jones, if you're the number 2 guy, you're floating around 750 to a million.
Yeah, I think 500 is low for
Yeah.
an NFL backup quarterback. If he comes in and he wins games, in a 3-week situation or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Teddy Bridgewater, had a devastating injury, went from starter to he's traversed the whole roller coaster of status as an NFL quarterback. First round draft pick, starter, playoff team, devastating injury, career over, inspiring comeback, reliable backup, actually, now coveted, new quarterback.
In the interest of accuracy, I believe he was a second round.
I think Rick traded up to get him in the first.
We'll have to look that up.
It was right on the cusp.
Yeah.
One or the other.
I think he was a second round pick.
Okay.
But I predict that Teddy Bridgewater will be the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
There you go.
Duly note that.
Yeah.
Here's another email from someone in Plain City. Nick. There it is. Hi, Nick. Thanks for the email. He says, if Spielman was the general manager for the Washington Redskins, would he draft Chase Young or Jeff Okudah?
They need both. I've done a couple did some Redskins games at the end of the year. Ryan Kerrigan's a guy who's on a downswing of his career, the most consistent pass rusher the Redskins have. They drafted a pass rusher, Sweat, last year, who's coming along pretty well. For me, I would probably draft Chase Young over Jeff Okudah. I think Chase is going to be a tremendous NFL player. I think that those pass rushers are so difficult to find. So are good corners, but you can find corners, and I just think Chase would be graded higher than Jeff Okudah as far as NFL grades and stuff. So you're talking about need at both positions and who has the higher grade. The higher grade would be Chase Young, so I would draft Chase Young over Jeff Okudah. If I'm the Lions, I'd probably draft Jeff Okudah third, since they're probably looking to trade Darius Slay, who's their best corner, if he's there. If not, I would really look at the Isaiah Simmons kid from Clemson, the linebacker. That is a tremendous athlete, and in today's NFL, Isaiah Simmons is a rare guy that can go out and cover slot receivers, yet he's big enough and strong enough to play in the box to be a solid run player, and he can match up with tight ends. So it'll be interesting to see. I saw on the mock draft we were looking at the other day, Isaiah Simmons was I don't think he's going to fall out of the top 10.
I frequently see him 9th to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I kind of get a feeling that somebody's going to move up and take him earlier. And it's again, I haven't studied the draft. If I worked the draft for Fox Radio, sports radio, which I've done the past few years with Kurt Menefee and Jay Glazer and Joel Klatt.
My good friend Joel Klatt.
Yeah, I'll tell him you said hello.
Do that, please.
Why do you
he's a bold statement maker. He's not an analyst.
Okay.
He just makes bold statements. He doesn't tell me why. He doesn't tell me why.
Tells you what.
Tells me what. He doesn't even really tell me what. He just makes bold statements. This guy's the best at this. This guy's this. This guy's this. Why?
That's a good point. I mean, I don't know that he does that, but it's a good reminder for me to tell why, not what. So,
I would take Chase Young because I would always take a pass rusher over a corner. I said the Browns should have taken Bradley Chubb over Denzel Ward because, look, it's a big investment and pass rushers have a longer shelf life. You mentioned Ryan Kerrigan, like 10 years in the league at least. Terrell Suggs, Dwight Freeney. There are lots of old pass rushers who are productive. There are no old corners who are productive.
No, and their shelf life is 27 to 29 years old.
It's about 6, 7, 8 years.
But the Redskins just released Josh Norman too. So, and actually Josh Norman got shelved about week 13 of last year. So they're hard to find, corners and pass rushers. So those two will certainly, I think, be top 5 picks, which is a credit again to Ohio State and the amount of talent that they not only get to come here, but the great job that the coaches and everybody involved with that football program does to develop that talent. It's just amazing. It really is. It's fun to see.
Well, and to that point, they're every projection for next year has Ohio State as a playoff team and has Ohio State as the Big Ten champion. And they lost 3 All-Americans early. J.K. Dobbins, Jeff Okudah, and Chase Young. Nobody, I mean, you can say when people talk about, graduation losses, nobody ever talks about Ohio State's graduation losses. They lost 3 All-Americans early.
Isn't that amazing?
And most teams, if you lose 1 or 2, would be like, biggest shoes to fill. Yeah. Nobody even talks about that with Ohio State because they recruited so well and they developed so well behind. And after you watch Chase Young wreak havoc, you can say, Tyreek Smith will be next, or Zach Harrison will be next, or this guy will be next. You always know who's next.
It's unbelievable. Well, the other thing, too, with Ohio State is why, you can say that Ohio State's going to be a playoff team is because of the quarterback and Justin Fields and what he was able to. That was obviously the biggest question going into last year, and I exceeded expectations. At least he way exceeded my expectations of what type of player he was going to be. So, look, Ryan Day has it going on. He knows he has it going on. It's just the pressure that Ryan Day is going to be under is that he's going to get to the point where getting the playoffs is not going to be good enough. He's not going to be able. That's the crazy standard that it's not my standard. Well, it is kind of, but he's got to get one of these. When he has this type of talent and you're considered a playoff team every single year, I think that Ryan Day understands that the standard and what needs to be done, and for me to seal or to continue the legacy of a great Ohio State head coaches is winning a national championship. That's the standard that Urban Meyer has set. And Tress set it by winning a national championship.
Yeah, playing for 2 others. We chatted about running back, with Justin Fields, a healthy Justin Fields. I wonder if some of the wiggle, long-distance threat stuff that you think Master Teague lacks, would Justin Fields be a viable solution to that more? We didn't think, last year we thought, how much are they going to use him as a runner? They don't have anybody behind him. Now they'll have a freshman behind him. Do they dare use him as a runner this year and get him hurt? But if he's healthy, I think we tend to forget, and I'm not sure we ever really saw them fully explore him as a runner.
Yeah, I don't think Ryan's is committed to having a running quarterback as Urban Meyer was committed.
Well, you might need him at Oregon. You might need him at Penn State.
Yeah, I just
selectively employ him.
Yeah, I want to say what I said last year. I think when he needs to run, he'll run. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we're playing Miami or BG or somebody like that, don't run the ball. Just hand it off, and we'll be smart about what we do and when we do it. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Last night, as we transition into the faith portion of the podcast, I was on my conference call with my buddies, and the podcast came up. We were talking about how do you grade success, and all these guys are very accomplished in their fields professionally, and they all have sales teams and management teams that they manage, and I do not. But they said, well, you have a podcast. How do you and Chris measure success? And I said, well, that's an interesting question. I said, when we started the podcast, we wanted it to make an impact, and that was what we were committed to. But we've been competitors and in radio long enough that we also brought a lot of those grading scales with us in terms of number of people who listen and subscribers, and are we attracting sponsors and all that kind of stuff. And I said it's been a fluid situation for us to evaluate the success of the podcast in terms of our numbers grew beyond my expectations early, have stabilized, but are not continuing at that growth pace. But impact-wise, it's very gratifying to get emails from people who say, I used to tune out from the faith portion, now I stick around for the faith portion. And then I had a friend last night on the conference call say he had a buddy who used to listen to the podcast and he stopped listening because of the faith portion. And he didn't want to hear the faith portion anymore.
Oh, really?
And I was like, okay, that's fine. Because we know we're not for everybody.
What apparently he has trouble finding the off switch.
I said, well, that's Brian. That's why we put it at the end, so it's easy to X out of. He's like, yeah.
I would actually.
But then I had another guy say he doesn't have the time to listen to all the sports banter. He said, beautiful. I get on and I fast forward to the faith portion of the podcast.
I actually want to, do some shows where it's just a faith-based show. I was trying to talk you into that, but apparently Satan has a hold of you and you doesn't want you to do.
It got me in a death grip, particularly this week. Boy.
Well, he goes after God's favorites, and you've always told me you're one of God's favorites.
Oh, yes,
so.
there we go. I didn't think you could over embellish your story about my high school cross country exploits, but you just managed to. By the way, I laugh every time I hear you say, "Oh, when you won that state championship single-handedly."
Well, you did.
That cracks me up.
But you carried the team, Bruce.
Yeah.
Those guys all know it too because they heard me talk about it.
No, they don't. They know otherwise.
No, I mean, measure success for this is when the story of the gentleman that is dealing with, and he shared it, dealing with prostate cancer, and you know, when you get devastating news, I just had a conversation with a fella yesterday, and unfortunately, I have too many of these conversations, but he is concerned that he might be dealing with a cancer situation coming up in his life. And you know how to handle it and what to do, and if it happens, how'd you do it, or how'd Steph do it, or how'd you guys do it as a couple? And I just passed on my experience to them. So, and he heard about that guy through the podcast, and was asking me the same thing. That could be me. What should I do? You know, so I do think that we're presented certain opportunities, and again, our job on this podcast, on the Faith segment, is not to impose what we believe on anybody. It's to expose what we believe and to challenge you. And the thing I always think about, what if Bruce and I are right? What do you have to gain? Well, you have everything to gain. What if Bruce and I are wrong? What do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose. There's nothing. Then we're all wrong. Then after this life, everybody's dead and nothing exists. There's nothing there. And so one of us is right and one of us is wrong.
Yeah.
There's
no middle ground.
That's the answer. And the only thing that we ask you to do is just examine what you think is right. And if it turns you off, I'm sorry that it turns you off. We're not trying to turn you off. What I want to do and what we want to do is say, well, just examine it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Bruce's word for it. Just put the time in to examine it and
know why you're going to reject it, because it has the greatest gravity of any decision you'll ever make in your life.
So, with all that being said, I get Bible verses and read every single day, and this week I've seemed to receive one particular message. And I'm going to share a series of verses with you. And this seemed to be hitting me, whether it pops up on my phone or pops up on Twitter or somebody shares one with me. But this series of Bible verses must be a message from God. And it's really caught my attention. And it's basically about how I deal with situations and how I treat people. So just bear with me as I read these, will you?
Sure.
Therefore, as we have an opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. Galatians 6:10. But it's do good to all people. God will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Psalm 91:10. James 1:19. I talked about this the other day. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. These things have I spoken to you, that in me you may have peace in the world. You will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. So even though you're going to have troubles and tribulations and trials, don't worry about it. God's got it. And in the long term, keep the eternal perspective. Here's another one. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Well, quite frankly, I'm not doing this podcast out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. I'm not. I'm doing it as a chance for me and you to just have a normal conversation with people. That's something that's very important to us. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. Do not seek, that's Philippians 2:3, and this is the last one. It's Leviticus 19:18. It's the Old Testament, by the way, Leviticus for you. It's a book of rules. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people, but love your neighbors yourself. So that whole series of message was about how to treat people and how to handle situations. Be slow to anger, slow to speak. Be a good listener. do not seek revenge. I mean, all this, right? This is, and as I'm saying this, you're smiling because I know these verses speak to you, and it speaks to most people.
Really, this week speak to me big time.
Well, why?
I've had some. Yes, absolutely. I had 2 instances in the past week where I've felt like things have happened that were not fair. And you know me, and my career history is to really push back when I perceive that I've asked the right questions, or I've had good intentions and things have been twisted, or I've not been told the truth or the full truth.
Yeah, that's hard for you.
Those are
my
my
hard
struggles.
for most of us, but it's really hard for you.
So I was thinking this week, convicted, Bruce, you have an addiction to being right. You do.
You're right.
I have an addiction to being right.
That's interesting. Yes.
And so I prayed about it to handle the first situation that came up, where I tried to do something good. I tried to help someone, and someone threw a response back at me that it just very few things could be said to me that would aggravate me more than what was said to me.
I'm laughing only because I've experienced what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
I'm relating to it.
So I went to Proverbs, and I tried to reconcile that, and I tried to not respond the way I used to respond. And then I heard a message on the radio, and this is interesting how God speaks to you, because I went to my Bible and He spoke to me through verses in the Bible. And then I was listening to Christian radio, and there was a message on vengeance is mine, I will repay. And I've always thought of that as somebody who had like a really aggrieved situation. Your wife gets attacked, or like vengeance. And I thought, no, Bruce, that applies to you and your little piddly disagreements. Let God handle it. You don't have to handle it. And then part of the sermon was, you don't have to compromise your principles, but you do have to set aside your right to avenge and your right to be right, and to have the other person say, yeah, you're right, your way's better. So I don't have to compromise my principles. I don't have to say I'm wrong. I just have to let it go and not have to seek vengeance for it. And then you come at me with these verses, which the encouragement to me is, I took a step to try to handle it better than I've handled it in the past. So then the Bible spoke to me. So then the radio message spoke to me. And then Chris Spielman, who, we don't rehearse this stuff, folks. This is just off the cuff. What's working in Chris's life meshes and intertwines with what's working in my life. And so that's great. But then yesterday I had another different incident that's a big challenge for me. Mm-hmm. So God's reaching out to help me, and Satan's going, yeah, but here, I hit you with the left hook. Wait till I hit you with the right cross. So it's a battle. There's a battle going on, and you have to purpose to stand on the truth. What do I know to be true? What do I know about how I should react? Where can I go to find the resources to react in a healthy way? That is the battle of the Christian life. And as you do that, you will be given the peace to know that God will respond to you through the word, through messages on the radio, through friends, through this, through that. He will.
Through podcasts.
Hopefully.
So the old Bruce, when you received that message back, this would be the old Bruce's response. That's me typing 10,000 word essay on how you're right.
Well, this was a face-to-face, and I'm very gifted with the face-to-face comebacks and put-downs. No, let me rephrase that. I'm very cursed. It's not a gift. It's a curse. I don't want to get
talent you have.
I don't want to get into the specifics of what it was on the podcast. But trust me, when I tell you what it was, you will laugh when you know what this person said to me, because you'll be like, dude, I can't believe you didn't go hard back at him. And I so badly wanted to, but I know it was not the right response. And I'm not holding myself up here, folks, as, oh, look at me, I did it right.
No.
I've done it wrong my entire professional career. I have. Doesn't mean I haven't been good at what I do, but I've not been godly at what I do. I've not been humble at what I do. I have made way too many mistakes in that regard. I could have stood on principle and not sought vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I stood on principle and sought vengeance because, well, I'm standing on principle. I'm standing for what's right. You can stand for principle without having to avenge. Like I said the other day, my buddy who said, Bruce, do you believe God goes before you? And I'm like, sure I do. And he's like, no, I don't. And I'm like, what do you mean he doesn't? Well, why would you say God doesn't go before me? And he's like, because you're always out front. You never let him get in front of you.
Well, look, knowing you, first of all, when I first worked with you, and we talked about this, you and I have talked about it, and those are new to the podcast, your normal response was always an emotional response.
Yep.
And when I was a player and at the height of my competitiveness, my normal response was always an emotional response because I was always competing, always wanting to win, or, as you say, always wanted to be right and anxious to show you why I am
How right I was.
And to gloat about my rightness. And now you have been humbled. I've been humbled to the core. We're both two humble dudes here, to be honest with you. I mean, really humble guys.
Well, we're still fighting it. We're still battling. I'm still battling.
You're going to battle it for the rest of your life, but at least now you're holding each thought captive.
Trying, yeah.
So there's a verse in the Bible, and it's in Corinthians, and I'll have it for you on Monday, unless you can pull it up, and I'll go ahead and preach on this for 1 second. But you hold each thought captive to Christ. So what that means is, okay, when I'm presented with a temptation or an opportunity or a fight or to show how much right I am, how do I respond? Do I respond in the human Bruce way or the human Chris way? Or do I think about that response, hold that thought captive to Christ, then think about, well, how would Jesus respond? And it's 2 Corinthians 10:5. So read that, what that says. And so somebody can use this. I guarantee you somebody out there listening to this will use this weekend if you put it into action. Read it.
Yeah, it says 2 Corinthians 10:5, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. It's the WWJD. What would Jesus do?
Yeah.
In every situation, I'm taking this thought, I'm making it obedient to the character of Jesus Christ. The humble, not going to compromise his principles, but he's going to be humble. We said before, he's a gentleman. He stands at the door and knocks. He doesn't barge through the door, knock the door down. He waits for you to invite him into your life.
Well, that's fortunately for us, in Christianity, it's a free will and a relationship thing. You know, God's going to give you the freedom to make your choices and decisions, but he's also giving you the wisdom on how to make your choices and decisions. So if you're seeking wisdom